Hi, hello, and welcome to the Big Fat Instructional Design Review of 2020. It's been a fantastic year, and well, not really, I guess. It's pretty much the year we all just want to hurry up and fuck off, let's be honest. So, here in the UK, we are really exciting and really proud of the fact that we are the first country in the world to roll out a COVID-19 vaccine designed, engineered, and manufactured by several European countries we're in the middle of divorcing ourselves from because they're the problem, apparently. But in other great news, we're also stockpiling canned goods and firewood before we push out of the world's largest trading bloc without any kind of a deal, be it frozen, oven ready, or extra value. But the really good news comes from over the pond, where were promised an absolute masterclass in how democracy and the rule of law can bring together a divided nation. One fantastic thing, education has taken the biggest leap forward in living memory, as simultaneously educators, trainers, and L&D professionals around the world uncovered an ancient and almost forgotten form of training delivery, known only as Zoom. On that note, let me introduce today's panel as we take a somewhat light-hearted look back over the year that has been and what we hope might come next year. So joining me today, we have Julia, Anya, Joey, Cara, and Robin.
And I'm Mickey. Sorry.
And that's pretty much what you can expect from tonight's show. So first of all, thank you all so much for joining me at what has really been quite short notice, as I pretty much decided to throw together a show before Christmas as we hit the start of December. The only logical thing to do. So to get things started, let's do some introductions. Julia, do you want to go first?
Absolutely. So I'm Julia Huprick. I am professionally, I am the Vice President of Learning Science at Intellum. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief of Learning Science Weekly and a recent graduate with my PhD degree. And I think that's about it.
Awesome. That's about it.
That's
oh, yeah.
It was a busy year for me.
Fantastic. Robin, do you want to go next?
Okay, sure. So I'm Dr. Robin Sargent, and I'm the owner and founder of Idle Courses, and it is the trade school of instructional design and online learning that serves clients while developing the next generation of creative learning designers.
Awesome. That's how I always imagine my quick introduction of myself. It'll be that smooth and that professional. And then it's like, hi, yeah, I'm Tom. I've got access to the internet and a computer. Joey, over to you.
Sure. So, hi, I'm Joey Senarts. I've been doing this for about nine years now. Don't really have a degree or any formal education in this. I can pretty much talk you through a retail career if you want to. Currently working out and at Braze Technologies, doing a lot of corporate ID work. And I think that's pretty much me.
Cool. So probably the other member of the group who has heard, "Can I please speak to your manager?" far too often in their lives.
That's triggering. That's so triggering.
Cara, over to you.
Hi, I'm Kara North. I'm a training operations manager for Silfex, and I spend way too much time on social media, and I'm a self-proclaimed social media junkie, but I really care about working with emerging talent and helping people find jobs because there's a lot of opportunities out there.
There is. So almost like the introduction to the X-Files. The truth is out there, only your job is out there. I like it. And finally, Anya.
Anya's on mute.
It's the quote of the year. Anya, you're on mute.
On mute.
We did it.
Yes, I did it. I embarrassed myself. My name is Anya, and I am an aspiring, at least in title, L&D professional. I come from the accidental trainer department. So just kind of wanting to get a title here sometime soon that allows me to do training and, most importantly, data on learning and training efforts. So that's
Well, I think
really
I speak
all.
for everyone. I say just call yourself an L&D professional. Everyone does it anyway. Chances are you'll get away with it. That's the bedrock of my career right there. I can totally do that. Why wouldn't I be able to do that?
Fake it till you make it, right?
It's
Absolutely.
just putting together a PowerPoint, right? Sorry.
Yes.
So remove from conversation.
Mickey Mouse.
So we've got some really, really interesting topics to discuss tonight, starting with the virtual shift. That voice is the alternate, where more organized people might have had like a slide or an exciting video or an intro section. Just a funny voice. So it can kind of feel like at the minute, with everyone rushing to digital, that we've made this big jump forwards. And I think it's worth asking, have we? Or does it just feel like we have because everyone's installed Zoom or Teams or Skype for the first time? Any takers to start us off?
Yeah, I'll roll with it. So I actually started 2020 working in higher education, and I shifted back to corporate about middle of this year. And I will tell you that being somebody that was on the front lines in higher education, I am still arguing that, you know, we have not seen good learning. I'm calling it panic gaji is what's happened. So there's been this crutch of, oh, it's an emergency, it's remote learning, it's blah, blah, blah. But, you know, it's now like reality. We're here. We need to seize the moment and really be more intentional and thoughtful about it. And I haven't seen a lot of orgs really buckle down with that, really, because I think everybody is still kind of using this panic, right, as kind of almost a crutch. But I will say my experience at the beginning of the year, I couldn't believe what I saw. So
Interesting.
I'd love to jump on that, actually, since I've got kind of a similar appreciation for that method. So as opposed to working throughout the year, I decided to go ahead and get myself unemployed at the start of the pandemic.
Good move. Like it.
Go me. But one of the things that I acknowledged throughout my interview process is that it became a plethora of, this is our first time having this position. You know, this role is new to our organization. So I found like a new appreciation for us as professionals and pointing the spotlight on the fact that nobody had really any clue what that meant. So I found myself in interviews having to kind of sell their own position to them because they were in this triage mode of we don't have anybody who knows how to transition this virtually. So we threw something out there. Tell us about yourself and what we're supposed to be doing. It was very, very common. I probably went through about 36 interviews, and I'd say comfortably about 12 of those where this is new to our company and we're not really sure what this is supposed to look like. So I from the unemployed side, I'm right there with you because that is what a lot of people were looking for.
Okay, just a quick shout out. There are loads of comments coming in asking for Instagram handles and LinkedIn stuff. I will put everything for everyone on the panel in the description of the video after the show, just to save me rapidly typing the same thing 1,000 times. Also, because I didn't think to ask before the show. No, back to the disorganized thing mentioned earlier. But do, by all means, still ask. I'll just ignore your comment. So, who's up next? Now we've decided that everyone seems to have panicked, and people want to hire people, but they don't understand what they're hiring them to do.
I can't help but wonder, like, shouldn't we have seen this coming, like, to some degree? Like, we have had this technology for how long? And we've been, I think, as an industry, really resisting moving away from in-person training. And I don't understand why. I don't know. Like, maybe the answer is out there somewhere, like you said in the intro. But we've had this technology. We've been able to use it for a long time. Why have we not been spending the past few years figuring out how to optimize online learning? Like, it feels like something we should have done.
it does feel a bit like the horse has bolted and we're going, hang on a minute. Maybe we have like a set of trained people who do this for a living we could maybe hire or utilize or, ask for their opinion at some point. Or not.
It'd be nice. I'll just jump in as the L&D guy who really wishes that so many departments consulted L&D people before they just made their own thing and said it's training now because I filled a half hour, and we look at them and say please stop, this is bad.
Yeah, that's kind of been my existence because I ended up having to train a lot of the people I work with in some of the digital tools that the organization decided to implement. Because you always have people who are just technophobes, I guess, or, they just have an anxiety around technology that leads them to close down that learning gene, temporarily. So, and unfortunately, in a very regulated space that I am in right now, the focus is, okay, we need to, what do we need to deliver in terms of training and learning? Compliance, and everything else is sort of, well, either we get to it or, well, you kind of SOL on your own. And that's really frustrating. For the workforce, and it's certainly not a very efficient way to go about things, especially in a situation where you have to focus on the things that really work because you're already overloaded because crisis mode and stuff like that.
So I teach a course at my alma mater, and it's an online course. And before we started the semester, I went through some training. Now, some of the training was your traditional like online learning where you click the next slide. And then some of it was really fantastic in terms of there were these instructional designers who partnered with us, the instructors, and helped us to deliver more engaging lectures and helped us to deliver a better online learning experience. And I feel like that's kind of what we should be doing, right? Like we should be partnering with everyone in our organizations and showing them how you can do things the right way, how you can take that training online, and how it doesn't have to be boring and it doesn't have to be like clicking the next slide and that kind of thing. Like, is it on us, do you think, as instructional designers, as L&D professionals?
I'll jump in there actually, because I was thinking about this the other day and about how as an industry, privately amongst ourselves, not that anyone would ever know it, we like to have a bit of a moan about how businesses don't understand what we do, and that they don't see the value in what we do. And I had a really interesting conversation with a project manager who was really keen to understand what the instructional designers were doing because they were really expensive in their project, and they wanted to know what value they're bringing. And their team of instructional designers basically said, well, we can't tell you what value we're going to bring until once we finish the project. What? It's like, there's the problem. There's the problem. And everyone here is going, oh, that's horrific. I suspect there is a lot of this out there. You can't measure the impact of learning until it's happened. Learning is somehow different to everything else because you can't predict it or understand it. That's our job. But I worry that if that is systemic, as I suspect it might be, perhaps that's why no one's approaching us and saying, could you help?
Yeah, I would just like to say that I noticed at the beginning, so for instance, I had quite a few corporate contracts to build their training, and many of those were immediately cut. Their training departments were cut. If you've ever been through a company merger, you'll see that the first department cut is learning and development or their training university. And I think that probably impacted what training looked like in the corporate space. If we're just going to kind of focus in that area, I mean, I mean, I don't know if we're going to talk at all about what's happened to our K through 12 or our higher education as a result of the pandemic. But if you immediately cut all of your training resources because of concerns over budget and money, and they're not producing revenue, those kinds of departments, then you can imagine, well, when they do start doing training, who's left over to produce that training, and where do they come from? And so I saw like somewhat of an uptick where people started to unfreeze their budgets near like the end of the summer. And so, but even still, you've had all this lack, and then how much time does it take to onboard a new L&D team, and how many resources are you actually giving them, and things like that. And I think that just kind of compounded what has happened this year.
Man, that.
Yeah, you totally hit
No,
the.
go ahead,
Oh,
Kara.
sorry. I was just going to say, I think you hit the nail on the head, Robin. And this is something that I tell people that I talk to. They think there's like this magical way of like doing what we do, right? But I tell people, I'm like, listen, no matter where you work, they're going to have a different approach, a different system, different people you have to involve. So there has to be, to your point, that onboarding to that organization in order to be successful. And I think a lot of people don't really anticipate that. And so I think some people kind of get frustrated if they're like looking for a new job or like moving around or whatever. It totally, sadly, really depends on who your leadership is, what your leadership can do to amplify your team into kind of the conversation of what it is, and then how important it is to the organization, to your point. And you're right, a lot of times it does get cut. It takes money, not necessarily makes money, right? So you're absolutely right, Robin.
Let me jump in on that, because I think there are a couple core issues there. One is, at least from the conversations I've had with way more experienced people than I am, one is the analytics side that seems to that L&D seems to struggle with, particularly analytics that kind of tie training back to business outcomes. And so the effect of that is probably that, your leaders are like, well, haven't made a convincing argument for this, which it's sad, from a leadership perspective to put that blame onto a department rather than taking an actual leadership role and encouraging it. That's a whole nother story. But the other thing that I find exceedingly frustrating, has been a longer term problem, is that organizations have really hyper focused on specialists. So people who have diverse skill sets and are actually, because of that diverse skill sets, very adaptable, have very little chance to bring value to an organization in that, especially as an employer, as a job seeker. And so if you're looking for, if you're going to cut resources, but you don't have a workforce that is very adaptable and prone to picking up diverse skills, because you haven't fostered that kind of environment, I mean, your cutting efforts are left with cutting the specialists. And so this is very frustrating to me. And I am really hoping that organizations will learn the right lessons from this crisis. But I mean, how many crises have we had, and how many times have we not learned the important lessons? So I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like that is how you end up with the 7-page job description of the entry-level instructional designer that needs to know every coding language, every authoring tool, needs to be a professional video editor with a minimum of 32 years experience in software that was only released 5 years ago. That's, because we're so obsessed with everyone must have this insane level of skill to get in the door, rather than do you understand how learning works? Yeah. Have you used some software? Yeah. Smashing. Get in. Here's the software we're using. Build stuff.
Yeah. I wanted to jump on the revenue thing, actually, because that is so I've been corporate ID product application. That's where I work now is corporate product application. And it's that fight of you don't bring in revenue. So what's your value is incredible. And it's not something it's not something anybody ever talks about until they're starting to make cuts, right? You don't talk about money until it becomes a problem. And for the L&D department, you can't make that case very well. And I always have struggled with, all right, I'm not trying to make, like, I've always looked at training, especially in corporate ID world, as I'm not trying to make money specifically. I'm really trying to protect what you have, especially when I've got contracts, like hundreds of thousands of dollars of contracts that are threatening to leave because they don't know the basics of the platform. And that's where all their incremental, project money is going, is training and basic stuff. And I keep trying to make that argument. It's like, if you don't have to do that, your client service managers aren't wasting time. Your support teams are not wasting hours on stuff that training can cover. You're not losing those contracts because some other company comes in with ease of use and they just win. I always have that fight. So that revenue thing, Robin, that you said, it's more trigger words for me. It's just, I wish that there was a better way to kind of show off that value of what we kind of protect and what we keep, as opposed to, adding a check to our content, adding a credit card number to our content.
Yeah, speaking of trigger words, I think another one we might as well bring up at this point is homeschooling and what it meant for the workforce to go to their home and to have their children with them while they're trying to work. And then you're like, and you're going to do some training. People are probably like, and they are not interested in whatever that has to, they're like, the training was probably outdated, or it's slapped together last minute because, you got remote now. And so now we have, like, this training is not even applicable unless we somehow reformat it to suit your current situation. And I just imagine the overload. Well, I have 3 kids, so I firsthand know that if I am distracted trying to work from home with them in the background, I can't imagine people taking the time even to reskill while trying to adjust to their new working environment and homeschool their kids. There was an interesting thing I read about, just how it's affected the children, this pandemic, and how, we've really seen the inequality in the education system, especially now, is just really highlighted. Mm-hmm. And so, like, lower income families and a lot of kids got their safe place at school, and now they are at home where it is in many ways unsafe. And so, if that's where things are, I just can't imagine that training would even be have room in people's brains for those.
Well, and to that point, Robin, infrastructure. I mean, there is a big part of countries that do not have access to high-speed internet. Where I grew up, there is no access to high-speed internet. My parents are lucky if they get 1 megabit per second. Honestly, they are flying high if they get that at their home. And so, to your point about people being left behind, there was this assumption because of this that, everyone has access to internet, right? But no, that is definitely not the case at all. And then now employers are asking people to work remotely where they may or may not have access to this. And then it gets in this sticky kind of legal situation. Well, who should pay for that? Who should pay for someone to have access to this stuff? And that's something that's also kind of not discussed. So we're asking a lot of people, a lot from them just even accessing things, I think is a big discussion too.
Yeah. And if they're getting left behind because, a lot of truancy, affects learning or whatever for children, well, I imagine that kind of is what happens for the adults as well, right? You are now moved to an, work from home situation, and all of us are probably like adapt and like that's where we like to be. But many other people do not survive well or have like the self-discipline in place to be motivated. And so I imagine a lot of them also just kind of check out, and like there's higher truancy now with children. I imagine the same is probably true for adults.
Am I the only one who's like working longer hours though because of working from home? Like I literally get out of bed, get ready, walk across the hall to the office, and then, I'm there for 12 hours, right? Like because what do you do? Like, there's always an email to answer. There's always something to do. There's always, so yeah, I feel completely impacted by this whole situation, but kind of the opposite way that Robin, that you were talking about. I don't know that I've been slacking off so much as like working more, you know?
Yeah. I jump with that. I'm in the office longer, but I think I'm doing the same amount, mostly because like, oh crap, I'm coming home, so I got to do dishes, and that's a half hour. And like there's little things, but I am with you that I'm also kind of like maybe 8 to 7, 8 to 6.
Yeah.
8 to 6 I think is normal, but like 8 to 8, 8 to 9, stuff like that.
Yeah, but L&D people are overachievers. I'm talking
Yes.
about a wider like
True.
workforce.
I was going to say, you have all chosen to give up your time for free today to do this.
Yeah, other than today, when we're like getting drunk and I really got a new appreciation for teachers who also have kids, who were teaching from home and juggling, Robin, like you mentioned, like you've got 3 kids. I have 1 son and he's 11 and super self-sufficient, but it was still like he would come in, it was still hard. He would come into the office and, he'd want to know how my meeting was going or, how things, what time was lunch, those kinds of things. And it's really, really hard, but it made me appreciate teachers so much more.
I can feel it. I'm actively like in my office right now, and I know my wife just came home, and I don't know if she remembers this was going on. So I am actively like worried right now if like we're gonna get a special guest for a few seconds. So I feel
I love it.
I think one of the mental health effects seems to also be that the isolation kind of dims your ability to cope with other things that are normally happening at work. So if you're having conflicts or arguments over projects, etc., having that in a virtual environment often seems even harder. And so, there's, at least in my experience, there seems to be also this uptick in passive aggressive action via email and chat and all of that, because you don't necessarily have that immediate feedback loop of sitting or standing in front of the person and seeing what's going on. So, I mean, it's just an impact on the overall stress levels that you experience at work, even if you enjoy your work, even if you're happy with what you're doing, having that interactional or social component so vastly limited.
Yeah, sometimes there's just not enough emojis to get your point across.
So shitty mental health, something else we can check off, thank you 2020.
There we go. I have to pick up on Kara's comments in the YouTube chat there. When someone CCs the boss, it's on like Donkey Kong.
How dare you throw me under the bus like that?
and it only made me laugh because obviously my wife's working at home through this situation as well. So I have the joy of, I don't get to have a direct boss necessarily every day anymore. So if I CC myself, I'm just being a moron. But she has seen an increase in the number of times her boss has CC'd in. To which I made the point of saying, well, prove to them they're wrong and leave them CC'd in. That's as long as you are right. Yes. I've been aware on the side of my wife is always right, which has not proved to be incorrect thus far.
I think for the safety of your marriage, that's probably a good thing.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. She's also a lot smarter than I am and much better at her job than I am at mine. So hopefully none of my clients have joined us today. Yeah, I think that's that kind of passive aggression in the background within the workforce has certainly increased, which is once again an awesome part of this brilliant year that we'll all remember forever with such fond memories. We've gone for half an hour on the first topic, and I thought this was the topic we were going to glide past to get to the one we were all kind of gearing up for in the pre-conversations. So let's jump into it. Why are so many debunked theories and approaches still being bandied around in the L&D community, taught to people as they become IDs in certain circumstances, taught to teachers as fact when they get their degrees in teaching, and then still within the community held up as this is what good design and good work is based upon? Who wants to go first?
I'll tackle this one. And
Thank you.
I will just say, I have no idea why we continue to perpetuate these myths. And I have to say, I started as an accidental trainer, and I did the same thing that most of us, most people in L&D do. I believed in learning styles. I even gave people a quiz one time to find out what their learning style was. And so I'm just going to grab a book here. There's this really great book. It's called Neuromyths, and it was written by Tracy Tokuhama Espinosa, and it's all about debunking false ideas about the brain. But she has a whole chapter in there about learning myths, and I think part of it is just that it's easier to fall back on these legends that we've been told, these different myths that people tell. And it takes homework, it takes research, it takes effort to go and find the truth. And I think that some people, it's just not part of their daily routine. And I do have to plug the work that we're doing with Learning Science Weekly. We are trying to help people build evidence-based instructional design practices in corporate learning, in customer education. So we're trying to dispel a lot of those myths with actual science.
Yeah. Sorry, Robin, if you want to go first.
No, it's all right.
So this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, because I run, I've studied a number of different fields, and I run into this all the time, having, theories and myths bandied about. And, anyways, my take on it is that it's sort of human nature. We kind of gravitate toward things that are popular, and oftentimes, taught to us by authorities. So there's sort of the fallacy of authority involved in there. And I also think that we often just like things because they sound good, or because they feel good, or, they sound right, or it somehow matches up with our own experience or intuition that we really haven't probed sufficiently. So there's an amount of critical thinking that's just fundamentally missing a lot of times. And then you also have the fact that there is, especially since we've gone online in the last 20 years, just a glut of resources out there. And we don't have the time to examine all of this stuff critically. I mean, it's, and it gets worse every day with the amount of content that gets created. So I think the lesson is that perhaps even as L&D professionals, helping people change their thinking and practice good thinking hygiene might be something to get into. Again, I know you have 10,000 other things on the plate, but there's also just that building a foundation that makes other things go more smoothly in terms of the reasoning and thinking skill department.
So maybe it's because I'm a former librarian, and information literacy was something that we preached from day one. You needed to be a critical evaluator of all kinds of information, whether it was news or neuromyths or whatever. I think you're absolutely right. We just kind of lack that skill sometimes. And we do believe these myths, and it's just easier.
So where should people be learning that is an interesting question, because I was thinking about this the other week. Where is the missing stage where people aren't learning to assess things critically?
It needs to start early. I mean, this is something that kids can learn. Like they need, in terms of the internet and learning not to believe everything they see on the internet. Like it's something that I've been teaching my kid since he was little, because he would see things online and, he would ask me questions about it. So I think it starts really young.
But can you imagine?
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, can you imagine being a learning development professional that maybe started, let's say, in the 1990s, and you never kept up with the times? You'd still be making stuff. Who knows? You'd still have those 3-ring binders, killing giant sequoia trees, right? So I do think a big. I'm just saying, I'm not a fan, but I do think that it's so important if you want to do this as a profession. It's your job to grow, and it's your job to own your own learning. It cannot stop you getting a degree. It cannot stop you getting a certificate, a cute little badge, whatever it is that you're getting out there. It cannot stop there. It is on you to keep that growing, and don't rely on an employer to do it for you. You are the person that's gotta keep it going. And I also said in the chat on YouTube, like, I if you don't believe that people still think this, put something on LinkedIn. The hate will come hardcore. I had a post earlier this year where I shared something from Aaron Perdon about the new learning styles, and one was a Gangnam style learner. There were people that came at me saying, Kara, you've done this for years. How dare you share this trash? Like, do you not understand some jest, right? But then other people thought it was totally true. And when I was job hunting earlier in the year, I remember I had a phone interview. In the first 5 minutes, the person who was going to be my boss asked me what my learning style was. And I said, yeah, I don't want to be in the running for this job anymore. And actually hung up the phone because I knew that wasn't a place I needed to go. So,
like a boss.
Like a boss, like Donkey Kong. I think part of it is also embracing the fact that practicality has overridden any learning theory that I have ever read ever. And my internal clients have always won the argument versus, oh, you did Bloom's, I did Bloom's great, but the client didn't get what they needed. But since Bloom's was great, then the client's just wrong. Like that's never something that's ever worked for me in my career. And I think part of the challenge of and part of to answer the question of why so many get debunked is I also think that we loop learning and development into the same category constantly when we talk learning and development theory and learning theory. I do product training virtually. That is completely different than doing soft skills training, which is completely different than doing K through 12. It's different than doing empathy learning that I just recently learned as kind of a concept. And we always try to plunk it into the same idea of here's a learning theory that encompasses all, and we never looked at like the practical application of, does that fit for me teaching an application? Does that fit for me teaching a data process, teaching to a whole skill set that doesn't know? And it just never comes up. I can't find anything on it. And at that point, all I can do is just go off of my own experience and go off of my own understanding of the positions in front of me. And that's why I think we're just getting destroyed right now. Is now we've branched beyond teachers and the general concept of a trainer, and that's where so many of these things seem to just land for me. That's me being very biased, though, without the formal education. So I own that, but that's been my experience.
Joey, we should absolutely talk, because customer ed with product training, platform training, client-facing training is something that we absolutely talk about in Learning Science Weekly. So
cool. Find me on LinkedIn. I'm kidding.
We are connected, weirdo.
I just want to add another point. I think there is also the issue of psychological resilience, which is just to say that when you're learning and growing, you're going to run across things that you have believed, perhaps even for a long time, that are going to be shattered. And you need to be able to cope with that, being able to cope with being wrong or having thought the wrong thing. That's a huge skill. in abandoning false beliefs. And a lot of people, unfortunately, don't have that skill, at least not very, developed. And
We're seeing that
so
pretty publicly at the moment, aren't we? Let's be honest. Inability to let go, accept reality, face facts. Yeah.
Actually, can I reverse that? And this is a question actually for those who, especially like Julie and Robin and you guys who definitely have like the formal training. Because one of the things that I struggle with when I get introduced to something new is I look at it and say, I do this already. My natural kind of ability and natural thought process has led me to this. Like I got introduced to Gagne's 9 events of instruction, I think. And I did that like 2 days ago. And I was like, I do all this stuff. And I see a couple others like, I do all this stuff. So it's, for me, it's not even really debunking, more than like, this feels kind of basic and stuff I just naturally flow to. So the question for you guys is that something that you've also kind of noticed, that a lot of theories just kind of blend together and saying the same thing, just maybe differently? I'm not very educated in it, so.
In academia, you have the phenomenon of, publish or perish. So a lot of these things are people trying to come up with things that sound novel or innovative or whatnot and make a name for themselves in academia, because unfortunately a lot of the success as an intellectual, as a professor, is kind of tied to that. So I mean, I can't tell you how many academic papers I've read where people conceptualize some kind of model that seems entirely and then do, here's a case study to prove that this model works, where I'm thinking to myself, well, this is just common sense. And you spend like a year and a half on this, because that's usually a lot of the time that it takes to get something published. And, you probably had your graduate assistant do most of the work, but that's another story.
To an extent, part of the point is that a lot of this research is there to confirm that you're doing something correctly or in the best way, or challenge. So if you do read something and go, oh, I do none of that, that should be the cue to not go, I need to change everything I do and do this instead, but to read more and investigate and start to experiment and adapt. And I think maybe this is part of the issue and why there's a lack of research being taken in across the industry and utilized, is that we're all looking for the tell me what to do. I want 5 easy steps to create great training all the time. And you're right, it doesn't exist. Of course it can't. Because there's no context.
Totally not true though, because what we do, gosh, I feel like I'm like talking about LSW too much, but with Learning Science Weekly, like we take these different studies and then try to extract these key takeaways, what we call them, and like these practical tips, these things that you can use on a regular basis based on research. And so like I literally spend hours and hours every week reading through research that can be translated into these practical tips. I'm trying to bridge that gap.
And I think that's kind of, I love the email. It's kind of the highlight whenever that comes in, because I can then spam my Slack people with, look, we were right, or, oh, we might be wrong. But I've kind of messaged you a few times going, this will be so useful the next time a client says insert things clients often say here. And then they demand, well, prove to me why I'm wrong. If nothing else,
Julia said.
Or if you're like me, you can send them not your lovely little sort of summary, but the full paper and go, read that, understand it, and then you'll understand why I'm right. I don't. But,
Do you think it's worth it to mention some of those debunked theories that we keep talking around at this point? So I made sure to make a big list just in case I was quizzed. And I could just read off a couple of them, and just so that people know what we're talking about as far as like debunked theories.
Go for it, and we'll see who disagrees, and we'll have a massive fight on screen. It'll be great.
Awesome.
Fine by me.
Gangnam Style.
We've already talked about learning styles, right? So there's no such thing, no science. And I think it also points to kind of things that we've talked about, why do theories still exist that have been debunked? And I think it, it's money. So there has been cottage industries, there have been businesses that have been built on some of these things. So that's one. And then two, just like think that Anya's talked about, is that we love generalizations. They like compartmentalize so nicely in our mind. And so it is uncomfortable to have something that's in the gray. We want black and white. And so that's why I think a lot of them are pervasive. Also, right brain, left brain. The brain is not dualistic. There's a learning theory that's been debunked that young digital natives are actually able to multitask, and that's untrue. Have you guys seen the Dale's cone or whatever? Like, you remember 10% of what you hear,
Oh yeah,
20% of what you read, and 30% of what you see, or some kind of thing like that.
And that's why everything should be delivered through interpretive dance.
It's effective. And so
that's what the science says. Dance, the most effective form of training. I'm just doing what they say.
We reviewed that one article about it was about learners who would dance like they would swim like fish. Like each fish has its own individual like movement pattern, and so like students who actually moved like fish learned those individual patterns. It's kind of crazy.
Do they move like fish in a school?
Oh God!
So that was really bad.
Okay. Anyway, another one I saw was people forget at predictable rates. So I mean, obviously we know the forgetting curve is legit, but like they say something like students forget X% after 2 days or Y% after 2 weeks or whatever. And of course, we can't give specific percentages because there's too many variables. And then another one I thought might be interesting that may not be on your guys' radar is that just micro learning in itself doesn't, delivering content in small bite-sized pieces doesn't necessarily mean that information is going to be retained. And I know that micro learning is, one of our hot strategies that we like to use. But just the fact that you put it in 5-minute modules does not mean that information will be retained. They still have to apply and be active in their learning.
We'll just wait for the backlash on that one. How dare you criticize micro-learning? It is perfect in all forms.
It's my L&Dism. This is going to be fun.
Well, I was going to bring up, which is one of my L&Disms, gamification. And so I think there's this myth around gamification that if you throw a badge at someone, they're going to learn better. And that's absolutely not true. So we'll talk about that when we talk about our L&Disms. But to me, that's a huge myth that people tend to kind of cling to.
I'll spoiler mine to generational myths. All right, just because I was born a certain year doesn't mean I'm the exact same as everybody else born the certain year that I was.
You know what, though? I do believe in my horoscope. I'm kidding.
That's a personal problem.
We can't have that
Generational
kind
or
of professional
gender.
help on this show, I'm afraid. Anyone for any more?
There's some more.
Oh God. Of course there's more.
I got just 2 more, which are gender dictates aptitude of certain subjects. We all know that's BS. And then the other one, well, I don't know. I put it on the list.
That's fair. Fair.
And then you've heard maybe that if you just need to keep rereading things, then you'll learn it better. But of course, that's not active. So rereading doesn't make you learn it better unless you're doing something to actively engage with the content. And then the other one is that you should focus on just one chunk of material at a time, and instead more like the scatter method, or all different parts of the same type of component skill would be more useful than to just one laser focused chunk.
So
as a product trainer, that's massive for me.
Interleaving is what they call that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you guys, since you're on the topic of myths. The one that I just in other situations run across a lot is sort of this all or nothing. Like here, I'm giving you this model or this theory or these 5 steps. These 3 things will solve all your problems and will make you the expert in X, Y, and Z, or whatever it is. So it's like this idea that if you just have the right tool or the right framework, you can apply it to everything and you will always be successful.
Yeah, that's why I live by the rule of practicality myself, because it never pans out that one size fits all for me personally.
I need
But
an
it's
example.
convenient, isn't it?
So I think one common feature seems to be the ones that really stick around either fit conveniently into a triangle or a quadrant.
Cone.
Yeah, cones. Basically, any simple shape, and you seem to be able to get people to believe anything.
A quadrant.
So, those in the chat, look out for the amazing new model that's going to be released next week off the back of this show. But no, do you think, setting aside the shape, which is, I think, partially true, at least as to why some of them stick around for so long, simplicity does seem to be the thing that ties all the myths together?
It's incredibly marketable.
Yeah, they take a very, very complex idea and make it, for want of a better term, idiot-proof. It's this. You don't need to worry about 10 years of study and understanding the research. Just follow this graphic and you'll be fine. So as much as it's frustrating, I can see why people are taken in by them. I can sympathize a bit, like when someone this year says, oh, it's not real because so and so said, or this is going on because Bill Gates wants to microchip me, or whatever it might be. I feel, more than anything, I feel sorry for people that get taken in by these myths and these conspiracy theories. Maybe I'm just overly empathic, a sentence no one who knows me on a personal level will ever believe.
There's a great book. Sorry, Tom, I was going to message you this one too to include. It's called Why People Believe Weird Things by Michael Shermer. If you kind of want to get into the psychology and how it usually goes down that someone adopts a weird belief, it's a really good, accessible book.
Like it. That's last week in a recent podcast episode, shameless self-promotion, we touched on how Apple relates to this and how gravity is real, and yet there are people who believe the Earth is flat and gravity isn't real. And we kind of discuss how that relates to visual design in e-learning development. Obviously, straightforward connection. But I know this conversation could go on for a very, 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 very long time with desk aids and printouts and all sorts of things that we know always make learning more effective. I know because a triangle told me so. So let's move on to some individual points rather than group conversation. So I asked everyone on the panel to come prepared with their big trend of 2020. So I think this will be quite interesting. Joey, let's start with you. Big trend of 2020. Big trend of 2020.
I'm hoping I answered the question correctly here. That's what I'm going to go with. That's always the risk of going first, right? So I'm going to go with switching careers. That's my trends.
You just took mine.
Okay. Then I feel better. Sorry. There's plethora of people who switch from education to corporate, who are like, I used to be a teacher. Now I'm curious about instructional design. It was overwhelming. And I think part of it comes from that pandemic boom of, a whole lot of places are suddenly like, oh crap, we need to go virtual. We need somebody who knows how to do this because I don't wanna. And it was just everywhere. That's mine. Sorry, Robin.
Well, Robin, you may as well go next.
Yeah, go next.
Anything to add, I suppose?
Oh, well, I could add to Joey's point. It's totally my trend I saw too. Like, for instance, I run the academy, and I saw as soon as after COVID hit, I opened an enrollment, and I saw the biggest number of enrollment of students I've ever seen. It's only been open for a year. But the majority of them were teachers. I have teachers reach out to me on the daily about wanting to get out of the classroom. And the interesting thing is, what they say is they were already kind of leaning that way. They were already feeling burned out. They were already feeling like lack of appreciation or the political side of being an educator. But it was when the pandemic happened, and then now they have 3 or 4 different jobs as a teacher without any kind of compensation. And they're removed from their students, which is probably a lot of the light that they found about being an educator, that they felt like propelled to make the transition. And I've just seen it over and over again. So I agree with Joey. That is one of the trends of 2020. A welcome trend.
Yes, welcome trend. Please reach out. Sure,
Welcome to the gang. We're lovely, honest.
Most of us are lovely.
Just don't message Tom, it's fine. But on the flip side of that, is anyone worried about what's left in the world of education? As in the quality of the educators that are still there. I'm not sorry the quality, but either a lack thereof or that it's becoming such an undesirable industry to work in.
I think it's like the medical field too. Like you've got a lot of people who are burned out, who just they're in the trenches, man. Like this is hard. So I'm not worried about the quality. I'm really worried about their mental health and, whether or not.
My wife, I'd like to add retail to that list.
Retail is tough. Retail is always tough. Food service, all of those things.
Okay. So Anya, your trend for 2020?
Online meetings. So, and various better or worse facilitation methods associated with it. Maybe the emphasis is more on worse, but so with the flood of meetings that everyone I can't wait until I stop hearing people say, let's hop on a Zoom call, because that's just drives me nuts.
But anyway, point of standing on one leg when people tell you to do that.
Yeah.
Does that switch let's take this offline to let's take this online?
Yeah, let's take this off. Well, we had that discussion in the chat, right? Let's take it offline usually doesn't mean anything good. But so I mean, in some ways, I am hoping that there is going to be some innovation, because let's face it, online meetings in general, whether online or in a face-to-face situation, have always been terrible. I mean, I know very, very, very few people who can actually hold a productive and effective and efficient meeting. It's for some reason a skill that professionals rarely ever pick up. So transfer that into an online setting where you have all these different distractions in addition to that. Like me watching British crime shows, which, is more enjoyable to me anyways. But so I just think this is the trend, for better or for worse, that I have seen really stand out.
Zoom fatigue.
Can I add on to that about an article that I read recently about sending your hologram to a meeting, which I thought was hilarious, and something that I would totally love to do. But apparently, like Microsoft and I forget what other company, they're working on some technology where it's like virtual reality, but like, I don't know how I feel about meetings in virtual reality. It's kind of like meetings in, do you guys remember Second Life? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Like, people would like have meetings in Second Life, and it used to be the craziest, like dumbest thing, but everyone thought it was super cool. So
Interesting. Oh, Julia, what was your trend?
So mine was actually kind of piggybacking on my own comment. Mine was virtual reality and using VR for training. I see this come up in research studies and academic articles, scholarly papers all the time, including one that I hesitate to bring up, but It was in the medical field, and it was all about teaching future gynecologists how to do, I know, right? Using virtual reality, like using VR. Isn't that crazy?
I'm out.
It was a scientific study. It was so crazy. Anyway, so virtual reality is my trend of 2020.
Interesting stuff. And Cara.
So I think mine goes along with what Joey and Robin said, but before even just people coming or changing, I think 2020 has been the time in the sun for us as a profession. I think if you go back and kind of research who we are as instructional designers and really dig into the influences and kind of what got us here, I think that we have kind of been thirsty to really define what is an instructional designer, what does an instructional designer do. So the fact that now I can say I'm an instructional designer and people know what that means makes me very happy. So it's cool.
Yeah. Agree.
Down with that.
That's at least like an hour saved of every time we meet family, right? And they say, so what are you doing these days? And you go, oh, well, what I'm doing is...
I'm basking in the sun of my profession.
Yeah. So at my job, I work for Braze, and the instructional designer is new. And I usually just tell people, I'm the man behind the curtain. That's basically it. And then I'm done. And they're like, oh, okay, I know what that means. I'm like, thank God.
Are you talking about Julia's VR study right there?
Yeah, there we go.
The curtain.
You're all welcome.
Thank you for that.
Walk through that door.
Not the direction I thought this evening would be taking. Right.
You are welcome, Tom.
Yes, this is when I said this was a once in a lifetime event, this has cemented that. This is it. Never again.
You can't put out the mind's eye.
So, moving swiftly on to 2021, as I think we often wish we could have this year. What do we think we're going to see? And I want to kick this one off, actually, with I'm hoping that we see people realize that VR isn't ready. It's not good enough.
Even for medical people, even for medical professionals?
Especially for medical professionals after this conversation. And I say this as a tech nut. I've got stuff all around me. There's last count about 6 computers in my office. I'll buy it just because it's cool and new. I've got VR stuff. I love it from a gaming perspective. It's simply not good enough yet to be a great training tool. There are too many little issues, too many little limitations, and it's too expensive. Is the bottom line of it. It needs other technologies to catch up. I mean, just to run a decent virtual reality basic video game, I'm looking at a headset that cost a couple of £100 for one person. I'm looking for a really tightly controlled environment, and I'm looking at what is quite an expensive gaming computer. That's not realistic in most workplace environments. That's certainly not realistic in many school environments. Maybe at the very top end of, maybe if you are training for the medical field and so you've paid $1 gazillion for your degree, then they can get one between the 30 people there learning it. But at the minute, it's not there. That's my hope, is that we realize and that we stop, therefore, selling VR to people as a learning tool, because it's not. It's making us look bad right now. It really is, because we're having to explain, we're really sorry, we know it's rubbish.
Yeah, just the time it would take too. I mean, say you have a couple of VR headsets and then we're still in a remote work environment, or even those that, are in person, they're going to have to take one at a time to go and take the time to go put that headset on. And is it going to save their place or whatever if they, can't complete the full module, or all those kinds of considerations too, besides just money too.
And to add on to what you guys are talking about, in the newsletter that went out today, I reviewed a recent study that looked at immersive virtual reality. And the researchers noted that exact same thing that you were talking about, Tom, that it's so prohibitively expensive. And in order for the training to be effective, the virtual reality environment needed to be entirely flawless and entirely realistic, or you couldn't transfer what you had learned in virtual reality to the real world. And so like developing that training is going to be so hard and so expensive, and not many people can afford it, right?
Absolutely. Any defenders of VR in the group? Okay, moving on.
I'm still triggered from the Virtual Boy. So back when Nintendo had the Virtual Boy console, and that was it for me. I still have yet to be sold off of that.
Cool. In which case, let's move on to what you all think we're going to see in 2021. Any takers to go first?
I got some.
Go for it.
Okay, so I think that it's going to be more people investing in professional education, maybe outside of formal education, because maybe many have seen during this pandemic that it really is about skills. More skills equals more opportunities. And there are so many ways, because of like the focus of online education, there are so many ways to go and continue to upskill yourself online. And in addition to that, I think that there will be more digital credentials. I know that some of you guys have made fun of badges, but what I'm talking about are like digital credentials that are recognized, and are competency based. There are some recruiting and staffing firms that are starting to sync up to things like Credly and Acclaim and those other digital credential platforms. To their actual applicant tracking system, because instead of, a degree could be different, as far as what you learn in several different universities, but a digital badge or credential has specific skills tied to it. And so many employers, of course, are looking for very specific skills. And so, and then my third one is universal design for learning. I hope that is a trend that continues into 2021 about building training and education that is more accessible and also includes those universal design for learning principles.
Can I just pause for a second and point out that Tom just chugged the rest of his beer?
There was very little left in that.
No,
Yeah.
I feel like I was like cheering him on internally. So
It's also sat in front of like a 1,000 nit monitor. It's getting beyond the point where it's British beer warm to the point where it's like cup of tea warm. So
Yeah,
I'm
kind of struggling because I was looking at your glass and I was like, it looks like you can maybe put a cider in that glass, whereas I'm over here, like there is no question what this is. So I'm like, now I feel like I actually look like the alcoholic in the group. I will not be chugging this, by the way.
No idea. This could be vodka. So.
And in my defense, UK, it's 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock on a Friday. Like I can drink as much as I want. I don't have to feel bad about it.
And in my defense, it's 8 o'clock in the UK.
Yes. I want to piggyback on what Robin said. I think, and I'm going to use probably some rough words here. I think the continued fetish with degrees hopefully will subside further, particularly on the hiring side. And as we kind of see how higher education is struggling to adapt to online learning. Just quick story. In my data science program, the school decided halfway through the year to switch LMSs. And you can imagine how well that went. So I think plus the continuing rising cost of higher education, which is really indefensible. I mean, it drives me nuts when I see all these people, talking about diversity and inclusion, and meanwhile they charge tens of thousands of dollars for tuition. It's ridiculous. Anyway,
Good call out. I haven't actually connected those two dots as well as I probably should have in my thinking.
What do you mean?
The diversity and inclusion versus the amount of the amount it actually costs for people to partake in that culture.
Yeah. It's just to me it's indefensible, and I could be on the soapbox forever on this, but I won't. But the trend I want to talk about, which I think is a trend that worries me a lot, is one called automation or artificial intelligence, and especially as it's being as there are attempts to inject this into learning and development and training. And I am always for technology innovation, but I do think that L&D departments need to really think about whether they're addressing the basics correctly, whether they're doing well on that before jumping into some of these so-called advanced tools to speed up content creation or personalized learning or whatever. The thing with a lot of these things, by the way, is that there are old methods just couched in new terms, new sexy marketing terms. I mean, content recommendation engines have been around for ages. So this isn't anything new, but we're still really struggling with making these things truly helpful and worth the money and time. Because it's artificial intelligence. It's made by humans, and it's going to be flawed based on that. And it's not going to be able to mimic the intricacies of the human brain. And I hope some of these folks on here who are worried about that, don't be worried. I don't see an instructional designer or an L&D professional being at least completely replaced by some kind of artificial engine, machine learning algorithm. Because I'm studying this, and I can tell you, it's very flawed still.
So you're saying it's going to be a long time before I can just get a contract and say, Alexa, make insert name of course here and get paid. That's a way off. Yeah.
Alexa, do the dishes.
That would be
I have to make sure you're not triggering mine. I'm just checking her over here.
I mean, I just think it's premature, a lot of this, seeking to, I mean, goodness, if you can't even manage your LMS correctly, why are you looking at spending money on these extra functionalities that the vendors want to push on you? It's just, like, stop trying to be a gold medalist runner when you can't even, do a 5-minute walk without getting exhausted.
Absolutely. And to close off on the AI thing, why would you want to put learning and development in the hands of Skynet? That is just asking. So who still needs to put forward their 2021 predictions?
I'll do mine.
I've got fingers pointing, but I'm not sure the squares are in the same place for all of us.
Oh,
that's fine. I'll do this. Here, this should make it pretty obvious.
Oh, there we go. It's all about Joey. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna use that as probably my ringtone. I think now it's all about Joey. No, all right. So my prediction for 2021 is actually kind of basing off of everything we've already talked about, and for me, that's a breakaway from standard content creation methods. In an effort to get me into a lot of trouble here, I think storyline needs to get knocked down a couple of pegs. Hard. And with this influx of people who are brand new instructional designers and trainers and these companies who have hired in to kind of serve that triage need, I see in 2020, once that triage is done, those instructional designers and trainers saying, all right, let's do this for real now. And those companies saying, well, we don't have the budget for storyline. So I'm hoping to see more creative, interesting content creation methods, such as your Vyond, your Dooleys, your Camtasias. I've got, at our company, we're using InDesign in a really bizarrely amazing way that I'm just like, I would love to see more of that. I would love to see more unique content creation methods. I think it's going to happen just because of the influx of people and just the pure budget that does not exist for some of these companies to pull that off.
I mean, disclaimer, I love Storyline. I think it's a great bit of kit. It catches a lot of flack and it's not perfect, but no tool is perfect. But I do worry that it is almost between that and Captivate, it's almost become default. I'm building e-learning, therefore I need one of these two, whichever one my business has bought. Whereas you're right, it's not always the answer.
Yeah, so I was unemployed for a good 6 months. Start of the pandemic, I got myself hired in October. But during this, so many of those job descriptions were Storyline Captivate, Storyline Captivate, Storyline Captivate. Were two of them, and it was very clear at that point when somebody just Googled what instructional designers use, because I rarely see somebody use both to begin with, and I'm like, you're a small company, there's no way. And if I'm new to the organization as an instructional designer, if you don't have this role, you don't have those things. So it was mind-blowing to constantly see that, and it almost was like my understanding of those tools were what was used to gauge my abilities as a trainer. And I stopped appreciating that. I stopped selling that. I stopped kind of catering to I need to learn the living crap out of Storyline in order to succeed in this interview. I went away from that, and I kind of hope others do too. I not to like completely diss Storyline. I get its value. I do like Storyline for certain things. I just think it's for certain things.
Never mind all the contract roles out there that say must own license to Storyline.
What is up with that? Like, I don't have that money. I don't have money. I don't have a job. Stop. You pay for it.
Yeah.
Get a trial.
Yeah. Oh man, I built a portfolio off that trial. I think everybody built it. There's your big trend for 2020. People getting a Storyline trial so they can make their portfolio. That's the big trend.
And then 60 days later, creating a new email address and getting another trial for another
exactly.
That was
they should.
The first 6 months of my freelance career. That's how it happened. Until I had enough money to pay. With the 1,200 quid for a license per year. It's brilliant bit of software, but it is pricey. I do now pay for my Storyline license. Don't.
I feel like Tom needs like a disclaimer here. Like,
absolutely.
Mine expired.
I did create a banner just in case. So that's
only
fine.
a joke.
It's only a joke, sort of. That was intended to be up at the start of the show, but I kind of forgot. But there we go. I've used it now. We're legally covered now, I'm sure. No,
this way.
Anything else for 2021, Cara?
Yeah, so I think 2021 is going to be the year of Adobe Flash.
Yeah, that's no.
I love it. I would love this to be the case.
Try it.
Amazing. We were just joking about Prezi. Let's get Prezi back.
Right? No, honestly, I'm going to shift it from kind of us back to the people that we represent and build for, which is our user base. I think 2021 is going to be about community. I think that there's a lot of damage from this year from just how we work, how we learn, and how we just function as human beings. I think 2021 organizations are going to look to someone somewhere to help build community, help have people make connections, help have people learn kind of more in the flow of work. And if we don't step up and do it, someone in IT or HR or somebody is going to do it, when I think we have a really great skill set and bunch of ideas that we could help do that for our organizations and kind of help repair this damage that this year has done to us. So I really think 2021 is going to be about the community.
I love it. I mean, I've been making lists of people to visit when we get a vaccine. I have missed food parties so much. I'm like, all my community is online right now. Like, that's it. Mm-hmm. And so I think that you are so spot on, Carl's like, yes, please, like, bring more community opportunities in 2021. I'd really.
And wear your Adobe Flash t-shirts.
Yeah. I just need more hugs.
Aww.
And for someone new to the space, I will say that this community, and I don't use that term lightly, has been amazing. I have, encountered a lot of other professional communities that are really not that great or helpful for whatever reason. And so I just think you guys are amazing in that department. And I hope that employers will kind of take a page out of your book in terms of encouraging more social learning, more mentoring opportunities, more, just interdisciplinary departmental work, in whatever form it is, because, you can't replace learning from someone else really. I mean, I haven't come up with an alternative. I don't know. Maybe there are robots some days to build communities.
One day.
Not sure.
One day.
I'll jump on and say I put in the chat as well. The community quite literally saved me and brought me back in. I was in a very difficult spot. There were many moments I just wanted to give up, and Tom, Karin, and so many people brought me back into it. And something we didn't even touch up on. Gosh, more big trends was the rise of imposter syndrome among so many people, and I was one of those. And the community really pulled me out of that too. So God love all of you.
Aww.
Group hug. Oh
wait.
God! Oh,
How about cheers to my empty beers?
hard pass on the hug, but yes, we'll raise our empty glasses.
Robin and I were all for it. We were like in there.
Yeah,
I'm ready.
this is that.
This is what the
that'll be
emoji hug
moment.
does.
Yeah, it's like this.
That's fine. You're all a safe distance, I feel. That's fine. Unless any of you have got a plane, I think I'm safe. So, final thing for today then. And this is where other people get involved after the show. Because here tonight, you will hear for the first time our nominations for L&Dism of the Year. The most or perhaps least sought after award in the L&D space. And my God, there are a lot of awards in the L&D space for everything. Like I'm fairly certain there have been awards for showing up most days of the year, not showing up most days of the year, and having the craziest hair at the Christmas party. So, L&Dism of the Year, the thing. It could be positive, it could be negative. I have a feeling most of them, if not negative, will be somewhat sarcastic. After today's show, there will be a straw poll launched. It will run for 1 week, and anyone will have the opportunity to vote on what they think the L&Dism of the Year should be. After the voting's done, I will post a secondary video as a little awards ceremony. I might even wear black tie to make it even more stupid. That's going to involve some very quick Amazonings. There is no way I can still fit into a suit at this point. So
you just need the top.
Right.
Yeah, you don't need the legs.
I'm fairly certain it's the top part that's not going to fit anymore. There's a lot of sitting here, a lot of drinking beer, and a lot of I'll just keep working while I eat, which leads to all the best food decisions, as we all know, like boxes of mince pies for lunch and things like that. So L&Dism of the Year, Anya, let's have your one first.
Okay. Sorry, I'm going to read it because I'm going to mess it up otherwise. You should learn insert tool method theory here because most L&D departments use it.
Popular, therefore the best.
Yeah, popular equals effective. Yeah, as a job seeker, I get that advice a lot. And, I always kind of go against, maybe this is just me being stubborn, but I like to be going against the grain and questioning the conventional wisdom. And it's just silly to me to think that way. But then again, if you're going to take job descriptions from various repositories and just post them online without really making, having any thought as to what the person in this position is actually going to do and what their particular context is, that's kind of the result. So that's why you get must be competent and articulate, captivate, blah, blah, blah. So I don't know.
7 years experience, entry level.
Yeah. 5 years experience for an entry level role. Look, I think that experience trumps being schooled in schools or schooled in schools. Yeah, theory, methods, tools. But if if interviewers or hiring managers are not given the skill set to recognize that, it's the landscape isn't going to change much for job seekers, unfortunately. Which I don't know. You know, every little bit of progress helps. So
interesting stuff. So, Cara, do you want to go next? Your L&Dism of the Year nomination.
Sure. So my L&Dism of the Year nomination is generations. Specifically that Gen Zs do this, millennials do this, boomers do this, Gen X does this. Ladies and gentlemen, each one of us sitting here today are individuals. Hear me, individuals. Quit stereotyping people based on the year that they were born. It is not, it may be stuff that people think, oh, well, because they're a millennial, they want it this way or need it this way. No, the best way to get to know what people want, ready for it? Ask them. Do research with your users. Get to know the people that you create for. If you don't want to do that, then very candidly, you should not be in this profession. Mic drop.
As a millennial, I don't like talking to people.
Hi. Not to contradict your point, but as a millennial, I don't like talking to people.
hi, I'm Anya. I don't like people.
We're a special support group where we just talk to ourselves in front of a mirror. It's great. But yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing your point is missing, Cara, is if there was like some kind of T-shirt somewhere available to make this point in a brash and loud fashion.
There is, but I don't like promoting my own stuff, so I will just leave it out there.
I'll promote it. I bought one. It's awesome. I've worn it to several meetings, and it's gone down with mixed responses, but always the responses that I wanted. So that's fine.
Look at this.
Yeah, what is this?
So Cara has a whole range of L&D merch. There's one about learning styles being a mystical creature. There's one about generational differences being BS, which is quite high impact on a video call where someone's giving you their demographics based on year of birth, and therefore you need to focus on non-digital training solutions because over 40s don't understand computers. I kind of held up a photo of that shirt and Bill Gates going, no idea, no concept of a computer, Bill. So we'll pop a link. I can see people are shouting link in the comments. Who's up next? Julia, do you want to go next?
Yeah, so my L&Dism of the year is, it's gotta be, and I struggled with how to phrase this, it's gotta be the number of consultants who write a book and go on speaking tours and probably have like not been in the L&D field for like a million years, but they talk a big game, and that irritates the shit out of me. Like people who are, I don't know, just these like big talking heads. That to me is, I don't know, that's my L&Dism of the year. There's oftentimes it's fluff. There's like no science behind it, which is a huge pet peeve of mine. So there you go. I'm not going to name names, of course, but
I think we all know of people like this.
Yes.
Yeah, I call it experteering.
Oh, I like
Experteering. That's a good one. That's a good word.
I call them L&D tambourines because all they do is make noise and don't show anything.
I like it, but they've all got kind of like gangs. Yes. I found this that if you disagree with them publicly, the gang descends.
It's so weird.
It's quite enjoyable though.
I made it hang out. I know.
Yeah. This is it. I'm not even going to look at my inbox after the show. I don't think. Give it.
The beehive has spoken.
Absolutely, Robin, your L&Dism of 2020.
Well, I think it's definitely for industry, and I would say the ism that I heard the most was the competition. Will I be able to find my place in learning and development. There's so much competition. And I think it also kind of ties into lack of confidence. It ties into imposter syndrome, perfectionism, whatever you want to call it. So many people bring up this point of there's too much competition. And the secret is that if you are willing to put in the work, just like Kara's already talked about how you need to put in the work of constantly growing and learning. And if you're specifically trying to make that transition of doing the work to build your portfolio and, you know, update your resume, then there is no competition, because there are so many people that that are tambourines. Kara, I'm just going to steal all your little isms.
That's going to catch on, isn't it?
Yeah. They're tambourines that make so many noise of like, I want to be an instructional designer. I want to do this. I want to do that. But that does not mean that those people put in the work. That does not mean that the people who are more experienced are putting in the work of growing their skills. So there is no such thing as competition. It only becomes creation if you show up and do the work.
Can I give a quick shout out on that one? Because I have a friend, Shannon, who had that exact, like, that was the thing, was she's new to the industry. She was recently laid off because of COVID. She was laid off from a training job she fell into, and was only there for a couple months. So she wanted to get into L&D, and she was looking around, and she saw the job descriptions and was like, I have no chance. I have no chance. Anybody who can come in with a resume even close to this is going to beat the daylights out of me. And she got hired yesterday. She absolutely surpassed all of that. So I love the crap out of that just being nonsense. So
yeah. And that's the best way to overcome any kind of imposter syndrome or lack of confidence, is to do the work. So do it messy. You know, all beginnings are, and all first outputs are crappy, and just keep putting in the work, and your process, you know, keep following the process, because eventually your outputs get better if you get feedback.
No one meets those job descriptions. No real person has that breadth of skill, not actual skill. Anyone that says they do has probably downloaded all those softwares and has access to them, but perhaps not the ability to use them particularly well.
Or a lot of emails to rotate and articulate storyline trial. Not that we do that.
No.
Robin, I think you may make an excellent point. And I would say also that as a job seeker, which is just, extremely frustrating space to be in, situation, and mentally exhausting, think of where you want to work, what kind of place you want to work, what type of people you want to work with, and the kind of people who fall for wannabes or big talkers are probably not the type of people you want to work with. So, it's like dodging bullets. That's the way I look at it.
One thing that we kind of skirted around about the hate on the e-learning authoring tools is, I did see a trend this year specifically for job seekers getting to the second or third round, and then they get some kind of a test, if you will, that they have to build something in one of these tools. And, myself as a hiring manager, I will not do that to someone, because I don't think that's fair. If someone is looking for a job, they probably don't have access to those tools anyway, and they're probably already a nervous wreck. Why would you want to put them in that? But I've heard from others that some may think people are getting free work out of it, right? Because if it's like company stuff, I mean, maybe they're getting some kickback from it. But I'm hoping in 2021 too that these interview processes get a little bit better. And one of my favorite things is going through someone's portfolio and saying, hey, I see that you made that. Walk me through your process. Like, what was it like kind of doing that? And I think you can get so much more, to your point, Anya, about somebody's process and how they do it. They actually have to kind of talk the talk to talk through that, versus if it's something they took as a template or something, right? So that's kind of how you can tell if somebody knows what they're talking about or not. Mm-hmm. But I really would love to see in 2021 moving away from that, because that just puts so much stress on candidates. And then, I know we've joked about it, but technically it is kind of violating the terms and conditions of these softwares making multiple accounts. And why would we want to push that from an organizational perspective, right? Oh, let's hire somebody that breaks these. That's a great person. Bring them on in, right? I don't necessarily agree with that. So,
We
Yeah,
call
I've-
those people outside of the box thinkers. They're a real asset to your business. They will cause you to have a lot of fines from regulators, but they'll be fantastically good fun to work with. But I think that the interview situation will surely improve as businesses understand what they're hiring. Because I still remember my first proper L&D job. The people interviewing me had no clue, not an idea about what they were hiring me to do. And they openly said that at the start of the interview, which filled me with a wealth of confidence about the role I was interviewing for.
Having to sell the position along with yourself just sucks.
Absolutely. But I think that will improve as, like you say, as businesses now for the first time know what we do and kind of know they want us or people in the industry. Or fingers crossed, at least if it gets worse, we know we've done something horribly wrong. I've been trying to note these down as we go. Joey, I think you haven't done yours yet, have you?
No.
Go for it.
So my L&Dism of the year is not actually a trend or things that I saw multiple times, but one single quote that came during one of my interviews. And this was a senior director of a Fortune 500 company. His LinkedIn is gorgeous. I want this thing until my L&Dism happened. Super excited about it. You know, when you see those kinds of credentials, there's a lot of weight on that. And we were just talking about kind of how we train, how we educate, stuff he likes. And here I get this line verbatim. It's in my brain. I'm reading it also, but micro learning is for people who don't know how to train. Okay, so where this leads into is that desperately clinging to convention that we've talked about multiple times throughout the course of the last 90 minutes. Why things are getting debunked and why we're so afraid of change. And to hear this from somebody who should have so much esteem in a position of a company where so many people are impacted blew my mind, which is why we joked about it earlier. If there is a trophy that exists for this and it gets sent to me, I'm going to send it to this person. Because it is comfortably the most boneheaded thing that I have heard this whole year. There you go. Take that as you want it.
So I take it you won't be reapplying if the job comes up.
Huh?
So I take it you won't be reapplying if the job now comes up in future.
So, all right. So just to add context to this. So this was a two-part interview where I met with him and I met with his manager, the person who was under him, and they were looking for somebody who was like an innovator. They wanted me to talk a master's degree to him and be like, we want to see how innovative you are. And here comes this guy knocking down like one of the biggest innovations in the last decade and saying, I just want to do long-form crap. I was like, shut up. I was half tempted to actually remove myself from that. I would have loved to do that. I think it was Cara's your story where you're just I'm just gonna leave now. I kind of wish I could have done that. I really wish I did that. That's what should be playing in my head as opposed to micro learning is for people who don't know how to train.
Don't you want to take interviews just so you can do what Kara did? We're just like, oh, this conversation is over.
I feel like that would make us terrible people to go out of our way to get interviews just to do that.
I appreciate what you're going, but you're wrong.
It's on my bucket list.
The next big series on YouTube. Interviews you won't believe. So
Karen and I were joking about that during the Innovated for Hired. My interview horror stories are spectacular.
There's a whole other show there, but I have noticed
this is too empty for that.
Yes, we have sailed past our hour and a half guide time, which has been lovely. I did say beforehand, this is as close as we're getting to a Christmas party this year. So this has been very, very nice. We have our L&Dism nominations. The straw poll will be up in the next 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how quickly I get it done. 25 minutes is what I'm sort of saying in code there. Half an hour. Keep pushing. But please do vote. If you're watching this on catch up and it's still within 7 days, which would make it the 18th, please do vote and keep an eye out for the Star Spangled results show. Not to set that up too hard.
That's our line, UK boy.
Right.
Okay, we'll have warm beer and a bulldog. I don't quite, this is what we do. We go to other countries, we nick stuff, and we put it in museums. All right.
Okay.
So now we're nicking phrases because we've been told to start giving the stuff in museums back. But words, they're more fluent. We're allowed to do that. So it has been a real pleasure. Everyone, I think, has hopefully enjoyed the show. Hopefully you'd all like to come back next year and do it all over again. Everyone will say yes, and next year I guarantee you completely different set of guests because they won't be speaking anymore. But before we do go, does anyone want to shamelessly shill, plug, or try and sell anything?
No, just connect with me. I'm happy to talk to anybody about any of the things. Is that a shameful plug to say connect with me?
I think that's acceptable.
Yeah.
Same here. Please connect with me, and happy to give advice or
back at you.
Advice.
Same here, guys. I'm fresh off the unemployment train too. So if you're job seeking, I've lived the hell that you have lived this year. More than happy to connect.
Same, just don't sell me anything.
Yes.
Please. Y'all, I'll just remove you immediately. You connect with me, you pitch me crap, you're gone. I don't have
I
patience.
think I remember a post where you said that, actually.
But do you not like to sort of take the conversation on a bit? Like, you've wasted my time, now I'm going to absorb as much of yours as I physically can. Like, I'm going to get as far down your sales pipeline as possible just to go, nah, actually, you're right.
I actually do that for the premium, like the LinkedIn premium, like when they send you like an email, if they do that, I totally waste that. If you send that to me, pitching me crap, I'll totally accept it and then shoot you down.
I think it's worth putting Kara, putting your phone number for getting L&D jobs. I think that is.
Oh yeah, I can put that number out there on. I'll put it in the YouTube comments right now.
See, these guys are all far too nice. In this situation, were it not my show, I would have gone full Linus Tech Tips and gone, the sponsor for today's video is, and sold you everything under the sun. But that's the old phone salesman coming out. Anya, sorry, I cut across you there.
That's okay. That's okay. So the self-promotion thing is something that I'm actually working on a little bit because I'm so terrible at it. Come find me on LinkedIn. There's, to my knowledge, only one Anya Hartleb person on LinkedIn. So it shouldn't be that hard. I will be on the TLDC cast next week with a session on how to think like a data scientist without any coding or math involved. There we go. Wow, brain fart. So, and if you have any data analytics related questions, need some help with that in terms of, connecting it to L&D, please reach out. I'd love to help in that space and move the community forward. I think that was pretty good, I mean,
that was pretty
good.
good.
A little bit more polish. Yeah, but
yeah. And to say, I say shamelessly self-promote. There is nothing shameful about self-promoting. It's how we get business, right? That's right. Sooner or later, whether we dress it up as no, I'm not trying to sell you something. Yes, I am. Or whether it's, we all make money through something, whether it's working for someone, selling something, or there's nothing wrong with it in theory. Just do it in the right ways and don't do it near Kara, apparently.
Oh.
Super. Well, thank you all ever so much for your time this evening and joining the show. Thank you to everyone who's watched. Thank you for everyone watching on, I keep saying on catch up as if somehow we're on like 4OD or 5USA or something. It's YouTube and Twitch. But nonetheless, thank you very much. Do get involved with the voting, and all our connection details will be in the description of today's episode. Enjoy the rest of 2020, or not, as the case may be. Watch out for those pesky microchips. Who knows what information Bill Gates is after you for? Are you having cranberry with your turkey? Are you not having turkey at all? Those people are the ones who should watch out.